Form of therapy that I undertook with Lenape Valley Foundation was EMDR. After having done the, DBT course. But EMDR is essentially not as scientifically proven as people might want to think it is. Again, you run into the same problem without actually mapping the brain and looking at how the brain is changing and how the nervous system is changing. There's no proof that any of this is really doing anything, okay? And that's the problem. Everything is subjective in this type of work. So there's no actual science going on. So this is about a psychologist that essentially called this therapy pseudoscience. So it's called eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, or EMDR, and it first entered the field of clinical psychology. Now, what's in the late 80s? Now, what's humorous about this is these are the same people that don't like things like neuro-linguistic reprogramming because life coaches do it, and they don't like life coaching, and they don't like anything that isn't in their little cult of what they consider to be authentic psychotherapy. Okay, so it started in the late 80s. Since its introduction, more than 25,000 mental health professionals have been trained in the procedure. It has been applied to millions of people worldwide and promoted as a paradigm shift in psychological treatment. It has also been shown to be scientifically and theoretically inadequate, according to Jeffrey Lohr, professor of psychology. EMDR is being touted as breakthrough therapy, practically a miracle cure for post-traumatic stress disorders, Lohr said. But as more and more objective scientific testing is performed, the treatment proves less and less effective. Now, this is the case with all forms of psychotherapy, you might notice. The more you test this stuff, the less it's proven. It should be the opposite if this stuff was really working. Lohr knows how to spot bogus therapies. For the past 4 years, he has dedicated his expertise to identifying and debunking pseudosciences, particularly in the field of psychology. He acts as president of the Science and Pseudoscience Review, special interest group of the Association for Advancement of Behavior Therapy, and has published several articles on pseudoscience scientific treatments. His latest article, co-authored by James Herbert of MCP, Hahnemann University, and Scott Littlefield of Emory University. It's actually humorous that it's Hahnemann University because Hahnemann is the guy that created, what do you call that? Oh my God. What the hell's the name of that? Oh my gosh. Homeopathy. He created homeopathy, which is in itself a pseudoscience. Okay, so, man, I can't believe I didn't remember that off the top of my head. I'm getting rusty here. Okay. His latest, and appears in the latest issue of Clinical Psychology Review. That's because the theory behind EMDR is not scientific at all. The theory behind most psychotherapies has absolutely nothing to do with science. It's all imagination. It's essentially like writing a novel. That's the problem with psychology. You can put anything down on paper, and that's essentially what psychology and psychotherapy and all this stuff is. They write a story, and then they look for, with confirmation bias, they look for things to prove their story, but they're not looking at the things that disprove their story. And that's the problem you have with the behavioral health field and behavioral health research. It's very bad science. It's not very scientific at all. So the creators of EMDR developed the therapy based on research which showed that rapid eye movement aided in the processing of memories during sleep. Okay, now what's funny about that, and I've gotten into this, I think I did a couple videos on sleep. One of the things that helps process things in sleep is not necessarily the rapid eye movement, but the neurogenesis and DNA repair mechanisms that are activated during sleep, which has probably not really much to do with the rapid eye movement, and it has to do with other things. You have to keep in mind also that we're only currently really understanding what sleep is for. Sleep has been poorly understood for the majority of human existence. We're only really realizing now why we even sleep. And, how it clears bad amyloid plaques and all this other stuff. Okay, so they theorized before that introducing rapid eye movements while a patient remembered a traumatic event would help the subject more quickly process and come to grips with the memory. To facilitate this, the therapy consists of 3 components: prescribed eye movements, in which the patient's eyes are followed to follow the therapist's fingers in specific patterns; desensitization, or the ebbing of emotional distress through the repetitious remembering of trauma; and reprocessing, in which the patient reinterprets negative experiences in a benign way, free from self-blame. In order to qualify as a new form of therapy, a treatment must consist of unique components, and each of the components must be essential to the outcome of the treatment. EMDR meets the first criterion, but not the second, Lohr states. In their article, Herbert, Lilyfield, and Lohr cite numerous scientific experiments which compared patients treated with the traditional EMDR protocol to patients treated with the EMDR protocol sans eye movements. Both groups showed similar relief from trauma. Further, other research has reported that removing the processing component from EMDR made no impact on the outcome. So you don't need the whole thing. You get it? You only need pieces of it to work. Basically, the research says you can take the EM and the R out of EMDR, Lohr said. So all that leaves is the D, the desensitization, which, if you're familiar with therapy, desensitization therapy has been used for well over 100 years. As a result, the eye movements and processing techniques do not represent a therapeutic innovation, as EMDR proponents claim. Rather, they account to little more than a sales gimmick. So the desensitization which goes back to like operant conditioning and that type of thing. It goes back to classical behaviorism. This has really nothing to do with what we would consider a high-end, hoogity-boogity psychoanalytical horseshit. So the marketing tactics, these are marketing tactics, not scientific evidence. Okay? So let's move on. So this website is called Mad in America. Trauma survivors speak out against dialectical behavioral therapy. This is about DBT. Okay, in 2021, blah, 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 blah. Okay, despite the majority of the individuals being sent to DBT having histories of severe childhood trauma, little about DBT treatment is trauma-informed. Rather, clinicians are trained to label feelings like suicidality, restricting food, self-injury, crying, and feeling sad as problem behaviors, and are taught to engage in irreverent responses to clients who exhibit them. Talking about trauma is often shunned, and any of the aforementioned behaviors are commonly viewed as attention-seeking. Despite 80 to 90% of individuals diagnosed with borderline personality disorder reporting histories of childhood trauma, these individuals are merely viewed through the DBT lens as people with problems that need to change. Not only is DBT problematic, but what happens to clients prior to starting DBT is too. Many clients report that their therapists quickly terminate them, saying they need DBT without providing them time to process why they are being sent away and all of a sudden shunned. Some report realizing that they don't like DBT and attempting to return to their previous therapist, but being told no. This was the experience of someone in the STOP Dialectical Behavioral Therapy group who gave permission for me to share. Quote, my therapist terminated me because she thought I needed DBT and couldn't provide it. So what's funny with DBT is being touted as like the new miracle cure along with EMDR. These are new therapies, but they're not really that well proven because the research is very flawed. Okay, that's the thing that you have to understand. Behavioral health research is extremely flawed and unscientific. This was months after I dumped all of my childhood trauma in her office. She said she would continue working with me when I completed the 6-month course, depending on the report of the therapist running the group. The DBT group exceeded $2,000, which was really difficult for me to come up with, but I did. The DBT therapist said I should also meet with her weekly while in the group, and that appointment would be an additional $150 per week. I could not do that financially. I just could not. So she reported to my therapist that I wasn't engaging in the gold standard. I received a letter a week later from my therapist, who had said she would see me after the DBT group, and it said that she would not see me at any time in the future. So I was left with this gaping wound of having shared all of my trauma, and now it's just sitting there all raw and unprocessed as I deal with a therapist who I truly trusted and really liked, thinking I'm too much for her. Unquote. Now, what the problem is with DBT is it's about punishment. If it's about punishing negative behaviors and I wouldn't say rewarding good behaviors, but it's about negative reinforcement. Okay, there's a lot of negative reinforcement in DBT. I'm not going to get into this. You guys can read it on your own if you want. Moving. Now, RAP is another so-called evidence-based idea, wellness recovery action plan, and it's supposedly, evidence-based. RAP was invented by and is the property of Mary Ellen Copeland. RAP is a workshop run by a paid RAP-trained facilitator. I was one of these RAP-trained facilitators, might I add. Okay, in the mental health industry. This is hocus pocus as well. Okay, so they teach participants how to implement the key concepts of recovery, hope, personal responsibility, education, self-advocacy, and support. You have to understand, one of the problems with this is not received. Even if this, so you can have all the hope you want, hope don't make you better. You can take all the personal responsibility you want, taking personal responsibility isn't going to make you better. You can be as educated as you want about what's going on, but it's not going to make you better, and you can self-advocate all you want, but you're going to get shut down. Okay, so help participants organize a list of their wellness tools, activities they can use to help themselves feel better when they are experiencing mental health difficulties. Assist each participant in creating an advanced directive. Help each participant develop an individualized post-crisis plan. Okay, so SAMHSA says their review found RAP had positive impact on symptoms of mental illness, hopefulness, recovery from mental illness, self-advocacy, physical and mental health. 100% of the studies on RAP used by SAMHSA to certify it were by RAP's founder and owner, Mary Ellen Copeland. So it was the 100% of the studies. Not 1, not 2, not 50%, not 75%, not 99%, 100% of the studies were by the founder of RAP. Review based on a single test, SAMHSA's certification took place in 2010, and they claimed to have used 2 studies to prove their intervention is evidence-based. Okay, one was preliminary brief study, blah, blah, blah. Study had conflict of interest. Mary Ellen Copeland, who created the program, and 2 others who work on it were authors on both studies. No review of long-term efficacy. The studies relied on were 6-month studies. That's not long enough to tell how well something's going to work, and especially not in behavioral health circumstances. Important outcomes not measured. RAP does not claim to reduce So it does not reduce hospitalization, violence, incarceration, homelessness, awareness of illness, and other important outcomes. It does not claim to reduce hospitalization, violence, incarceration, homelessness, awareness of illness, and other important outcomes. So these were not measured. Then what's the fucking point? SAMHSA certified the program in spite of negative findings. No statistically significant differences were found between the 2 groups across time on somatization, obsessive-compulsive, hostility, and psychoticism subscales. No statistically significant difference was found between the two groups across time on the subscale for ability to generate routes by which goals may be reached. Participation in RAP may have had negative effects on empowerment. SAMHSA still reports findings that are not likely true. SAMHSA relying on the non-peer-reviewed study. It's not meeting the scientific method. This is not science. RAP participants had significantly greater reduction, blah, 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 blah. Impact in the United States, local regional RAP programs sponsored by mental health agencies. So sponsored by mental health agencies, sponsored by taxpayers' dollars, and peer-run centers exist in every state, and over 25 states have integrated statewide RAP initiatives. Conclusion. RAP likely makes people who go through it feel better, as do most interventions that involve and recognize the suffering of people with mental illness. But clearly this has not been rigorously evaluated. The desired outcomes may or may not be the most important. The results are self-reported. The results are self-reported and not independently verified. Not independently verified. There is no data showing efficacy beyond 6 months. There is no data comparing it to other interventions. Moving on.